The meeting to order. This is now just the planning board meeting of May 3. And we have a couple items on our agenda, and I wanted to make certainly that Jennifer gave me some information to read, and that we're no longer doing it pursuant to the emergency order, but we have some new hybrid standards, and that's why staff is meeting with us online along with an applicant. So we have that ability to do this, and we'll see how this works. And the emergency order does continue through June 6th, is it, Sabrina?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll be meeting via Zoom after this meeting up to and through the June 6th meeting. So anyway, our first item this evening is a resolution. This is on BAUCO, 6 Conte Lane. This is an application for a site development plan approval, subdivision amendment, clearing grading limit line, steep slopes, tree removal, stormwater management, and erosion and sedimentation control permits. And we last heard this on April 19. So, Alan, you're up. There's a huge crowd here. Throngs. So I think the main thing on this was we're set with the resolution, but I think one of the things in the resolution was spoke an awful lot about the clearing and grading limit lines. And Alan, if you would be so kind as to show us what those are right now after our discussions and where we are. The last we talked, we were going to set up a situation whereby the expansion area for septic would not be cleared. But at the same time, we set up something in a resolution that's fairly unique, and that is if there were a need for the expansion in the future, it would be just a stop to the building department and not something where you'd have to come back to the planning board. That would be sort of pre-approved if necessary. But nonetheless, the clearing and grading limit lines would be drawn without the expansion area built out. And then, of course, we knew that there would be a change in the clearing and grading limit line if, in fact, you had to expand the septic. So if you could put those up and show us what those lines look like, it would be helpful.
May I share the screen?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, is that visible to you?
Yes.
Good. I spoke with Mr. Seal yesterday, who explained to me essentially the type of map of the clearing grading limit line that you were looking to have. And what this drawing does show, I hope it shows, is the line from the plan, which is in kind of this red line here, which is identified as the clearing and grading limit line. As you can see, this is the wetland buffer line. So as you can see, it does not impact the wetland buffer line. And it also includes, and I'll just zoom in on this area here, the 100% expansion area, which is hatched. Yeah. And it is excluded from that area and has this note on here and also on there's a note on the plan, I'll show you that too, which says this area may only be cleared in the event the septic system 100% expansion area is needed, and this is identifying as shown hatched. There is also, in the legend here, area that may be cleared of trees for construction of septic system expansion area only. And note number 2 on this plan, note number 1 describes the clearing grading limit line, which is 31,755 square feet or 0.729 acres. And note 2 says the hatched area may only be cleared of trees in the event that the septic system 100% expansion area is needed. The area of the hatched area, per gram, is 5,950 square feet, 0.137 acres. Just so you know, as per comments of when Mr. Shield and I spoke yesterday as well, notes 3 and 4 are listed here too. And if there's any encroachment to the lands beyond the clearing grading limit line shown in this map will require planning board review and approval. And we also discussed putting a note regarding the wetland buffer line. And as I showed before, the clearing grading limit line does not go past that line here. But I did want to make note of the fact that we are planning to put some trees in this area here on the property, as was illustrated on C-104. So any encroachment to the 100-foot wetland buffer shown on this map, except for planting of trees authorized by the approval from the planning board, will require further planning board reviewing it.
So Alan, what happens to your tree count now that we're not clearing the expansion area? Have you worked that out with Dennis so that the number of trees being eliminated will be reduced? And maybe that reduces the amount you owe the tree bank? Or is it something that you have to apply for now in case you use it in the future? I'm not quite sure how we do this.
That's a good question. I did not update that drawing to show that. I think in the drawing that I presented, I left this area vegetated anyway. So it is, I guess it's something that we'll have to work out.
So-
Maybe something we don't work out.
Wouldn't it be the case that, maybe I'm wrong, wouldn't it be the case that should that expansion area need clearing, there would need to be a permit anyway? And all those
Yeah.
calculations would be done
At
on
that
the
time.
basis of that activity.
So what I'm suggesting is just to make sure that the applicant is not overpaying, if you will, to the tree bank for trees that you are not clearing. And of course, that the count itself is different in terms of what's being removed. But if those were not going to be removed anyway, I thought they were. I thought there were some that were marked just in case, but I don't have that plan with me. But anyway, I mean, I think that's something we can remedy. That you can work that out with Dennis and resolve that.
They were showing retained in this area.
Yeah, okay, So that's easy to-
It would not modify.
good.
I guess the question that we have is, would this map of amended clearing grading limit line be acceptable as an included sheet in the overall set of plans? If that is, then obviously we'll include that, and we obviously know that has to be done by a surveyor for the file map, but it would therefore include a line like this.
So Bob and Sabrina, are we okay with that? Seems like a
Yeah, I mean, I
good addition.
have some minor comments, I'll just go over with Alan, I don't need to
Mhm.
waste everyone's time now, but just some minor comments with the graphics and stuff like that, I'll call him up and discuss that with him.
Okay,
Nothing substantial,
Yeah, and I'm fine with including them in the plan set, I think it's a good idea.
good.
I think so too.
Okay,
I
great.
would agree. It also cleans up the other,
Okay, great,
makes it very straightforward to review.
good. Does anyone have any questions on the resolution that's before us? Alan, any questions, problems with it? Are you okay with it?
No, I think I'm fine with it. I was sort of thinking that one of the conditions for the signature could be, of the chair might be, not include the health department approval and have be part of the building permit, but I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, any questions at all? If not, is there a motion to adopt the resolution as proposed?
With the changes that will be made with staff, by staff.
Yep.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, motion's carried. Very good, all set, Alan, thank you.
Thank you very much, really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank
We
you.
go now to our next item, and this is a request for an extension of an approval. And this is for the extension request for the application for a preliminary subdivision plat, steep slope permit, tree removal permit, stormwater pollution prevention plan approval for the Button Hook Road, Sabina Road, CHAPPAQUA School District project. So what is before us is a request just to extend the preliminary approval. Now, we have received a lot of, a good deal of correspondence about some issues on the property, but that's not before us at this point. There's no change at this point in the preliminary plat approval, so it's merely, we're looking at that. I believe that council has been in touch with the applicant, conveyed the correspondence that we have received from neighbors and others. And we will look forward to some sort of comment from the applicant when it comes time for final. But at this point, we're just looking at the preliminary. And Sabrina and Bob, can you fill us in terms of progress and where we are on this?
Sure, in accordance with the letter that came in from the applicant, they're looking for an extension, a 90-day extension of their approval due to working with New York City DEP on their stormwater
Right,
pollution prevention plan.
right.
Yes, I concur with Sabrina. I mean, that's what they're doing right now. They have still a lot more comments to address with DEP. I guess once they get that DEP approval, I think it's written right into the schedule of the resolution, then they can proceed coming back to the board for the next phase.
And they're looking for an extension to August 25th, 2022.
Right. And this is the second round of DEP comments? Did they already address them one time and then the DEP's come up with new ones?
Second might possibly be the third round. Yes, they seem to have more comments. When they submit, they have more comments, which is perplexing to me, but that's how it's going.
Did we already give a 90-day extension? Is that why it was?
Oh,
here?
we've given several.
No, I know, but I'm saying, but was it 90 days? Because February 1st, that was essentially 3 months ago. And
Yes.
Is 90 days sufficient? I mean, do we need to do this? That's
You
my
are
point.
limited by the code to 90 days.
Okay,
Okay,
well, let's,
It might be insufficient, but.
yeah, right.
probably will be, yeah.
Okay.
So,
What did Counselor talk to the applicant about?
well, about the correspondence that we received from neighbors and other interested parties on the Native American structures and perhaps historic grounds.
Yep,
So,
okay.
you know, basically the correspondence that we have received, I think we made sure that they have a copy of it and they are aware of it, and we're hopeful that they will address that during final. Yep. But at this point, there's no change in the application. I know there was one, we haven't had time to go through all these letters. One just came in very recently, it's quite lengthy. But I know there was a call for a rescission of our approval, but you know, there are also laws that we have to obey and processes that we go through, and council has addressed that and spoken with all parties.
Okay, so they'll probably come back for the plan sometime.
Yeah, for final, exactly. So anyway, is there a motion to adopt the or to grant the extension that they've sought? Motion, okay, second,
Second.
Motion, I'm sorry?
but that was Kanan.
Thank you.
Second was Eldad. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Now, we have a referral from the town board on new legislation. I don't know if Jen's on yet, I guess not, who's
She's
here?
jumping on momentarily, she said
Okay.
I can speak to you about
Yep.
this if you.
Yep, if you could, yep. Tee this up for us.
The town board, so the town board was approached by a resident trying to solve an issue within the BR and BRP zoning districts regarding subgrade apartments. And the legislation you have before you, and I think Jen is coming on. Maybe she can give you more explanation. Jen, do you wanna explain the BRP subgrade apartment?
Yes, sorry, are we there? Sorry,
Get in there,
We're just starting.
Okay, so we're starting with the local law.
yes.
Perfect.
I mean, we've gone through two other issues on the agenda, we're now at the local law.
Got it, thank you. Sorry for joining late. I reviewed the local law this morning, and spoke to Sabrina about it, spoke to Tom DePaul, and was just trying to get some more clarification on the intent for the local law, as well as, what was trying to be achieved by the local law. So in speaking with Sabrina and with Tom, I circulated some revised language, that we reviewed earlier today. I circulated that to the board via email earlier this afternoon. And basically, my understanding of what the town is trying to achieve is, currently in the BR and BRP zoning districts, you're allowed to have residential dwelling units above first floor retail, but you're not allowed to have the residential units either on the ground floor, the street level, or on the lower floors in the basement. And along the King Street Hill, there's a lot of opportunities there for walkouts in the basement. So I think what is trying to be achieved here is to create some opportunities for additional dwelling units as well as, recognizing the fact that there are those opportunities on the King Street Hill. So the alternative language, I will just open this up here.
Do you wanna share your screen so the board can see it?
Yeah, let me just get it
So
open here.
ultimately, the changes in the local law reflect, allowing dwelling units to be located, below the street level. As long as, below the street level and behind the street level commercial use, as long as there's no connection between the apartment and the commercial use on the street level.
So, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, this is the proposed local law, and the language that we had changed today is this language highlighted in yellow. I can see if I can make that bigger if you need it.
Please.
Okay. Oh, you're challenging me here. Let's see.
Go to 200, Jen.
200, yeah.
That's pretty good.
That works for us.
Whoa, that's a little bit too big.
Yeah.
175.
Go ahead, 150. There we go. There we go. That's good.
It's like going to the eye. Is that better or is this better?
I'm still blind.
Exactly.
That's good. All right. So apartments located below street level, used for non-residential purposes, can have a second floor located at the street level, provided that that portion of the apartment is located behind the non-residential use, and access is provided solely from the lower level apartment. And access between the floors of that apartment have to be provided internally. So in speaking with Tom, he really summed it up pretty well. He said, look, we want people to be able to do a basement level apartment, but they have to enter that apartment from the ground floor. We don't want them entering the apartment from the street level. So this is intending to accomplish that. And then there was also a concern about access between floors being provided via an external staircase. And I don't know if Sabrina, you can elaborate on where that concern originated from, but there is a concern with town staff that it needs to be spelled out explicitly that access needs to be provided internally within the apartment.
Right, and that's so that we don't have somebody living behind the store, if you will. You know, apartments that don't meet code, it's just a bedroom behind a commercial use. It was really, there's just a concern that would beget apartments that are not what we are looking for.
So this language is what we're recommending in place of the language that was in the draft local law that came to you. I think it helps to clarify what the town is trying to achieve. I think some of the language talking about apartments being attached to other portions of the apartment was a little bit confusing. So this is my recommendation, at least as far as some language to help clarify.
Can I ask a question about this language, Jen?
Yeah.
The proposed language says apartments located below the street level used for non-residential purposes. Does that say apartments used for non-residential purposes?
For the street level.
No, the street level
Commercial.
that's used for non-residential purposes, and that's mimicking language that's elsewhere in the code currently. So if we scroll down and we see, this is this section here.
But here it says the street level floor in a building used for non-residential purposes. I just think there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yep, so we can put street level floor, we could add that floor, street level floor.
But in general, what, this is in response to someone who was trying to do something and they came to the town asking for this?
Yeah.
When did that happen? Like when was the town originally approached?
We've issued violations for below ground apartments on the King Street Hill, and then we had an applicant come in and start this conversation. And I would say it was probably about a month or two ago.
So the question that maybe Eldad's getting to, but that I would have is, what was the reason and intent for the original code language that prohibited this, and why is it different? Why are we giving relief by changing the code now? What's the justification for it?
My understanding is that previously it was the idea of living above the store and there shall be no street level residential in the commercial districts.
So in other words, I'm sorry, so in other words, because now we have a potential for residential below the store, that we ought to be allowing residential there as an alternative to above the store.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Could you answer the question, why, because some of these, I mean, this is such a specific case, I don't know how many units this would apply to.
Here's a handful.
But generally speaking, if we're talking about the potential for like live-work units, somebody's got a, you know, who knows, an architect wants to set up a business, commercial business on the ground floor, why should that person not be allowed to get to his living unit from his office, for example? Is this a fire code thing or a building code thing, or is it just not just, is it
I think there's building codes involved in it too. I don't know for certain.
Okay, because it was Tom's apparently it was Tom's notion that they should not be connected. So I don't know whether that was his interpretation of the zoning code or some building code thing he was concerned about.
I can't answer for Tom.
Fair enough.
So, and does this language apply to any specific, is it just to the zoning district? Because it sounds like the issue is about the hill.
It's the zoning district, the BR and the VRP zoning district.
Got it. So.
We can't zone according to the hill.
Right.
Yep, okay. But the problem emerged from the hill, right?
Correct, from the topography.
Gotcha. So I just wanna commend whoever's involved with the reason I ask when this came to the town, and the fact that it's within a month or so of the request, and then there's language, and now we're talking about moving it forward. I think that's awesome. And this sounds like it's solving a problem and a problem that will allow for more housing in a safe and code compliant way. Seems like a winner to me.
I have some concerns that if you're going to put a subterranean apartment down, it will not get light from more than 3 sides or more than 2.5 sides, because you need natural light, and you have to make sure you're positioning windows so that if flooding occurs, that it doesn't get into the window area. I think this is something that has to be categorized as only applicable where the terrain allows adequate lighting, and it would be better in newer facilities that are constructed because they can produce a lower floor where a lot of storage is usually. You can do that and still leave the dankness alone in an apartment that's at least got one side totally in the dirt. And so this has to be constructed carefully. It's not hard to do, but it has to be done carefully so there's natural light, there's a way out other than the door or something like that. So I think this is somewhat premature, and so it bothers me. It's almost like it's a second-class apartment type of thing.
Well, I think certainly that they would have to comply with all of the New York State building code requirements with respect to egress and light
And ventilation,
and
right.
all of those requirements, so the building department wouldn't issue the permit
Well, add,
without demonstrating that they comply with those requirements for sure.
please add dankness to that too, because it's gonna be a danker floor. And no. And the other thing is, this is very minor, but it's worth talking about, I guess, for 2 seconds. Where did I put it? It's in here. Okay, so in the first paragraph of words, they say, it is the specific purpose and intent of allowing apartments and buildings that are also used for non-residential in these two districts to add round-the-clock vitality to the town's hamlet business centers. That's really very, very optimistic, because earlier you said there's only a handful of these projects. And
But this is language that's existing in the code today, and that's not proposed to be changed, that's already in our code.
that's already in our code, even though this may only be a handful of buildings.
So
Great.
the only thing that's proposed to be changed right now is the stuff that's underlined.
Well,
I support the notion, but I'm still in Eldad's court here. I can't really quite follow the English language or the grammar.
Yeah.
And I think it's, this very first line, apartments located below the street level used for non-residential purposes. We have apartments being used for commercial purposes, that's what it says.
But the
No, I think they
No.
mean the,
Jen's making
The
the
street
change, right, that is
floor.
We're throwing
apartments
some
used
commas in
below
there
the
or
street
something?
level floor of a building used.
for non-residential.
Okay,
No, it doesn't work either.
that doesnst work.
yeah, it's below
I get what we're trying to do, but the language is really stymieing me. So
May
I
have a second floor
It
located
was meant to be consistent with the language that's already in the code, where it talks about the street level floor in a building used for non-residential purposes.
He got it,
that
he
clause is
got
fine.
it.
Yeah,
I
she's
think,
close enough, I'm not gonna.
I think that clause is fine.
That's
Could you go,
fine, yeah.
could you go back to the,
Let's not
to the
get tough
proposed
about
text?
words.
May have a second floor located at the street level, provided at the street level.
what is that?
What's that?
I
I
don't,
thought that was the non-residential floor.
right,
Right, so the code would now be changed to allow for the second floor of the lower level so the lower level apartment would be allowed to have a second floor. So an upper floor, that upper floor would be at the street level,
Ah,
What?
provided
I'm confused.
that
Now,
that
really,
portion of the apartment is located behind the non-residential use.
Wow, I think you might wanna break this up into 3 separate
Yeah,
paragraphs.
I-
It's such a complicated
Yeah.
physical combination of things that for me, I'm with Bob and maybe Eldad also at this point. I'm having trouble deciphering the language.
I get what we're trying to do, but I don't see it in this language,
So can I just see if I understand?
Sure,
Today, if there's a retail use at the street level, if you wanna have an apartment, today the code requires you to have it above the retail use, right?
Correct. Above the ground street level use.
Correct.
Yes, above the street level retail use, and the idea is, especially given the topography of the hill, we wanna allow and encourage people to create additional residential uses behind the retail
Retail
use
use.
and below us, so that it could be below the street level
and
retail use and at the street level retail use, but behind the street level retail itself.
With no
Yes.
connection.
With no connection between the retail and the residential, but there is a requirement that there is a connection, an internal connection between the subgrade and at-grade residential use.
Residential use.
I do like Tom's point about like, why are we then saying retail cannot be connected with the residential? I mean, it's a doctor's office, a dental office, and he has a little home there. I'm just making it up, but if that's a
Keep going.
possibility.
Well, so hold on, so but is the way I described it accurate?
Yep.
That's
That's
the
the way I
purpose?
understand it.
So I completely support that.
Yes, I do too.
Whatever the language is that describes that, I support it, and then the
Yeah.
question of the access between the commercial and the retail, I mean, I get it conceptually that there's concerns, maybe it's a code thing. I mean, the other side of it is, you know, in practicality, what what
Don't
may,
break a door.
you know, what may happen anyway if it's an architect or a doctor that happens to live there also, they're gonna make a connection for ease of use.
So I have a question, now that, if I understand the language, the way Eldad, and apparently he's got it right, we are now allowing a residential use behind a street level
Two changes.
commercial use.
Right.
And is it necessary to have the below grade use as part of that residential use, as part of that residential use behind as one unit, in order to have the unit behind the retail, or can that be a separate unit?
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that the text distinguishes that and whether it should. What's the intent here?
The way it was described to me today is the intent is to not have a separate unit on the street level behind the retail use,
Okay,
but to allow it at the street level only if it's connected to the lower level, or I suppose the upper level too.
so I guess I don't understand the logic of that. I mean, why does it matter why can't it be two separate units?
I frankly don't know.
Sure, yeah, it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I mean, if the concern is, you don't want, small, illegal apartments, well, we don't want that anyway, we have a code. And, if we're allowing flexibility, then let's allow flexibility within code regardless.
It does sound as though the specificity of what we're writing here is really derivative of a particular condition.
Right.
That maybe if we're gonna do it for a whole 2 districts, we maybe ought to expand the possibilities here. I mean, there are other places, I think, in the BRBRP zone that have this kind of topography, unless I'm mistaken, at the corner of Bedford Road and North King on the southwest corner. There's a pretty dramatic topography there with some existing commercial uses, and I
And this would apply in that area as well.
Right, but
Yeah.
even topography or not, if we're saying that you can have a residential use at the street level behind a retail use, then it may be applied more
well, then
broadly.
it can apply, exactly.
So really, there's 2 changes here that are going on.
Yeah, and
The ability for 2 different places where you can have
Yes.
apartments.
and if you're gonna build a building behind another building, what are you gonna do to parking? It's worse because you're gonna have other cars there, or?
Well, they're gonna have to meet the code. They're gonna have
Right,
to meet
again,
those-
if it's all
So
code
this
compliant.
This is
This is not a change in and of itself. Building codes and other requirements need to be met
Right,
to establish apartments. You can't just do it.
right,
One
so,
thing that just occurred to me that maybe I think is a consideration here, if you're gonna allow residential on the street level behind the non-residential use, you wanna make sure perhaps that you're requiring a certain depth
Okay.
of the non-residential, so you don't end up with a little, I don't know, 20-foot
A
tiny
desk,
retail
a desk for
store
a
with
commercial,
an
right.
apartment behind it.
well, I mean, why not? So honestly, there's Eldad just got back from London, and I spent a lot of time in London. Some of the most charming, wonderful, and actually in certain neighborhoods, most valuable real estate you can find are in the Muses, which actually are converted carriage houses, which are just delightful, that back up to either another residential building or on a high street, a commercial building. And these are opportunities to do more with respect to, getting more different kinds of residential in here, which is one of the things we were looking for. And also increase, if you will, if it's done right, the charm of the hamlet. Now, I know we're broadening the whole thing to be something completely different than what it was intended.
We have to work on your
And
drawing.
maybe there's a subsequent sort of look at this that doesn't stop this from moving ahead, which might require a bigger
See what
look at
happens
what
when
we
you
could
got
do
it,
on
come up.
that particular subject.
pick
that
up
particular-
on
You're reviewing this as a referral, so you can put together a memo. I mean, we can draft a memo where you can suggest broadening it to allow apartments behind commercial uses. We can put comments in that
But that's what it
referral
does,
memo.
isn't that what it does?
It does.
It does do that already, but we're talking about, I think that this is specifically tied to, this would not be allowed, for instance, on let's just pick
North Greeley.
North Greeley, right?
Right, it's flat.
It's flat. And so maybe what we're saying, and North Greeley is particularly difficult to do this because it's site constrained anyway, but maybe it's a different thing where we say that you don't need to have a subgrade apartment connected to residential in order to have residential at the street level retail, which would be a different suggestion in a code
I
modification.
have a question, but where does it talk about grade change here?
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't work without grade change.
It could.
Correct.
Well,
Is it in the, is it
much more
It's not
expensive.
there.
It
Is-
can,
where
it
is-
can work
It
without
wouldn't
grade
be
change.
in there, it
It's-
talks about where the ability to have a ground, a below street
street
level
level.
apartment.
Keep out.
You-
And it talks about that right here, that the access is provided solely from the lower level of the apartment. So you couldn't have access at the lower level unless it's a walkout condition.
Yeah, you couldn't have light and air and all the building code requirements if you didn't have substantial grade change, otherwise you can't do a
Right.
legal unit.
That's true. So
Right.
I think it's implying.
So that would be sort of a back way into saying, well, it only
Right,
applies to.
Right,
Right, I like that, that's good.
But it doesn't address the other opportunity, which I'm suggesting we don't have to address now because it's gonna hold this whole thing up. And
Correct.
maybe think about this as another thing,
yeah,
Well, and you have a big forum to think about that.
another time.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So,
So,
So we're happy with the language as it reads, to just
no, I
be
think,
clear.
I think it needs help and I think it needs clarity for what we're trying to do, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
just wordsmanship, but I think the note that we send off to the town board should, if that's what we want, support the notion and perhaps even question, by the way, why are we putting this restriction on that grade? You know, obviously, we're opening up Pandora's box of the zoning because here we go. Ground floor, street level zoning for residential. which-
Yeah.
Which is a
Opens-
change, by the
opens
way.
door, right.
Yeah,
Which
and
is a
does it
change.
have parking implications?
Absolutely it
And,
does, yeah.
You know, all this has to be
Sure.
evaluated,
Yep.
and as Kanan said that, well, this is really particularly a case where they have the grade working with them.
Mhm.
And like you suggested, that doesn't happen, for instance, you know, once you get up into uptown, Chappaqua, or when you're on
Yep.
North Greeley.
And South Greeley, yeah.
If we
right.
do have to talk about grade, I think it needs to specifically address that is all I'm pointing out,
I don't think it hurts.
right?
I don't think it hurts to clarify it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put somebody in a dungeon with no light, no natural light.
Well, that's not gonna happen
It's
anyway.
underneath.
That's not gonna happen
You have
anyway.
to have window, it's
you zoned out dungeons.
Except for
we
planning
can
board
prepare
members.
a memo which kind of highlights some of these concerns with your overall support for the change.
Yes,
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Support it.
I think we're in agreement that the concept is there, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I had a tough time going through it on the first language, and even the second didn't help me.
So I guess the planning board function here, unless I'm mistaken, is not to write the legislation, but to advise on whether we agree with its intent or not. And I guess I would leave it to, Jennifer and whoever else are the ultimate wordsmiths here. Our suggestion is to see if you can make it more clear.
Yeah, make the concept clearly understood so that we don't have issues
Yeah.
with it later on interpretation.
Cause right now, I'm against it. Cause it's just, I don't understand it, I don't see how it works. I think it's extra, there'll be extra cost involved with doing this. And so that it doesn't satisfy some other things that we're trying to do.
Okay,
So we write a memo, do we,
Well,
there's a referral,
typically there's a referral response.
right?
We prepare a referral response, we can send it back to the board or to the chair for final read through.
I think it should come back to the board,
Okay,
that's a little bit
Yeah.
convoluted, and we have different opinions on it too, so I think I would feel uncomfortable just doing it myself. So I'd like
So if
to.
it's gonna come back to the board, I would suggest that we put this on our next agenda
Exactly, yes,
to talk
yes,
again.
yep,
Good.
thank you, Jen.
and in the meantime, we'll see if we can, you'll work to get it a little bit more clear. The language,
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
thank you,
yeah, we can work on that.
great, thank
That
you,
would be helpful,
Then you and I can discuss it tomorrow if you want.
yep,
Okay.
great, thank you.
excellent.
Okay, we have minutes. We have the minutes of February 15, 2022. Jen, do these reflect your changes? I see some red on this. I don't have a problem with it,
The red line circulated.
but yeah,
The red line of the February 15th were circulated.
okay.
That's good.
Anyone have any issues on the minutes of February 15?
I don't.
Yeah, Kanan, I don't think you can vote on because you weren't here on that one, so it'll be the four of us, or maybe three of us now. Tom just went out for a second.
Right.
Any changes, issues?
No, neither.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of February 15?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that was three. Tom was out for a second. The next one is March 1. This was the first joint meeting that we had with the town board. Any issues, questions? Anyone has any changes at all? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of March 1?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, we're all set on that one. And the last one we have is for the meeting of March 15, 2022. Any questions, changes?
I have none.
No, I don't either.
No.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to adopt the minutes of March 15?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Who motioned that?
Eldad was the motion, second was Kanan.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, we're set.
Yay.
Very good. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Terrific, great. All right, thank you.
Okay.
So I think